Hello, everybody, and happy Thursday to you. Thank you guys for tuning in today for another episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. Now, before we get started, I just want to say thank you guys for your support and everything that you guys have been allowing me to do to keep bringing these amazing stories to you guys. And if you have not already, do me a favor, head over to my YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification, and leave a question or comment. I have an amazing guest for you guys today. And I just want to say before I bring my guests up here that this is for educational purposes only. Now, without further ado, Devan, how you doing?
Good, Tony. How are you?
I am doing amazing. Good. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here today.
I'm excited to have you here. Now, before we get started, introduce yourself, tell people where you're from, and tell people about the work that you do.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I'm Devan. I'm the owner and operator of Devan Cecilia Counseling out of Chilliwack, BC, Canada. I'm a registered clinical counselor for about 10 years now. And I always had a passion of working with other people. And from a very young age, I found my calling to support people who were struggling. And with my own experiences and how life kind of went for me, I found a really big home in working in grief and loss, caregiver support, and just supporting people who were in all stages of grief, anticipatory, immediate, and long-term after. So I've been doing that in a private practice setting. It's kind of on the side for the last 7 years, I think it is now, and just starting to evolve and change and really wanting to help create change in how we experience grief and how we actually go through the anticipatory stages with our loved ones as best as we can. So thanks for having me, and so excited to talk more about it today.
Of course, man. I'm excited to have you up here. Thanks to everybody tuning in on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. All you people out there. Thank you guys for tuning in. And again, if you guys have any questions or comments, please put them in the comment section. We'll be sure to answer those as we go along. But yeah, in Canada, right? You know, like. You just said that you was going through all that crazy monsoon weather and things like that. Yeah. Whew. Oh my God.
We just had what felt like weeks and weeks of really heavy rain. So we've got some sunshine today, thankfully, and it feels good for the soul.
Well, it just makes everything so green.
It does. It does.
It just makes everything so green. I do enjoy a good rain shower, just not too much. You know, I'm trying not to grow too much. Because you water Tony just grows like little leaves. No time for all of that. Now, you mentioned being in the work. I got a question before we get into your journey. What do you find the most rewarding grief to deal with? Because we talk about complicated, anticipatory. Yeah, I mean, because we all have our own niche, right? Of how we look at the different types of grief. I know you mentioned anticipatory. You know, walking with those individuals who have maybe a family member dealing with a severe illness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, my favorite part. That's a hard one, Tony. You're starting me off good. I haven't a current real big soft spot for anticipatory grief, just because of situations in my own life, and realizing the lack of support that's out there right now in terms of making grief better. I love sitting in grief. There is nothing too weird or too different that people will come at me and what they do or how they're experiencing their grief or their connections with their loved ones. And I love those. I love to hear how people are making it individual and how their relationships with their person or their people is still ongoing. And while I love to sit in that, and I will forever sit in that, I want to help make that experience feel less guilty. And so I really am loving the anticipatory work right now because we're making changes so that when grief comes after loss, there will be hopefully a different experience where we're not yearning for tons of things that we didn't collect or get beforehand. And we wish we could have had, where that grief and guilt comes in.
Mhm.
And instead we can sit with those pieces that we have and go, I miss them and I want them here. And I'm going to have these things that we spent this time creating together. And I
Okay.
can feel a bit of comfort in that. So yeah, I think my heart kind of is sitting in the anticipatory grief right now.
Okay, hey, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? I love because the passion behind that comes along with it, and everybody's different. The way that we walk with those individuals is going what we do in that space, how we leave individuals, it determines of how the future looks for those, not just only us, right? But those who are coming behind us. Are we opening up the doors? Are we exploring every aspect of it and making sure that we're leaving nothing over, not looked under, right? Are we creating those opportunities? You know what I'm saying? Are we forever students of this thing? I like to think that we are. I really do. I like to think that we are. That's what makes us who we are. But now, my next question would be: within the last 7 years, have you seen like a huge change in the way that individuals are approaching the grief field?
I mean, I think COVID really changed things for a lot of people because of that isolation piece where we couldn't have our usual services or ways of mourning and honoring our loved ones.
Mm-hmm.
It made a big change in terms of the struggles that I would see in just the lack of closure that a lot of people were able to get, or feeling like their loved one didn't get to be honored in the value that they had in life because they weren't allowed to have all the people come. And so I really noticed a shift in that direction. If we're getting back into it, of course, we're now like a little bit of time outside of those restrictions, at least here for my community. And it's getting back to normal, but it doesn't change the experience that happened for folks in that, about 3-year timeline where we were quite limited in those options. And so I think for that, it has shifted. And the other component is more people talk about it, right? Like your podcast is here. There's so many podcasts out there now that talk about grief. There are Instagram accounts and Facebook groups and classes you can take.
Yeah.
It's not just your community hospice society or your local support group that might have it, or your private therapists. It is a lot more talked about. And I hope more publicly available to honor it, to talk about it, to walk with it, so that people don't feel so isolated and alone that maybe we have been in previous years or in previous decades where that really wasn't, at least for a North American culture, as open or as publicly supported.
Right. And I totally agree. And I just want to add to that, right? Because, when I got into this work 5 years ago, I struggled. I struggled because, being a male and wanting to work with other men like myself who had struggled with loss, but, and trying to provide a service. It was the better part of a year and a half where just people were just like, oh yeah, it's a great idea, right? And I would think that I would get, that I was trying to make connections, I was trying to network, I was trying to learn, and all of these different things. And so many people just shut the door in my face. And I realized, being on social media, I was just looking around. I was like, trying to reach out to people, and things like that. And I would say not as many doors was open as they are now, which I love seeing, because it does show that although COVID it wrecked the nation, but what it did, in a lot of ways, it brought a lot of things that we were trying to tell people out to the forefront, and pretty much put it out there and say, we're going to have to deal with these things. And although, although those doors were being shut in my face, I can say now there's so many doors that have been open.
Mm,
And I'm glad that I stuck with it. I'm glad that I'm still here. I'm glad that I'm able to talk with Devan today and so many other people and talk about the work that we do, bringing awareness, but also normalizing the conversations that we have around death, dying, and grief. Now, with
yes.
that being said, you have an amazing story. You
I
might
mean,
be,
no more amazing than anybody else in their experience.
I mean, but it's unique though, right? Because
Sure.
it's yours. And that's what makes it amazing. And for the fact of that you allow me to be here to be able to walk along with you in this journey and the audience as well. Tell us about how you got into this work.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the opportunity to share it. So, I mean, I feel like many people, but maybe not. I experienced grief throughout my life. I remember being 19 and it was my 20th death. And I thought, wow, I've had 20 losses and I'm not even 20 yet. I've had more than one a year, and they haven't always been every year. And so just the weight that landed on me.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't, I knew who they all were. They were all people, and some of them were pets, a handful of them, but it was just the reality that this is forever going to be a part of my life. And I remember thinking, like, does this ever end, or does it stop or slow down? And I kind of looked around my life and I realized, no, like everybody still grows up, everybody still ages, accidents still happen, health crises still occur. And I remember thinking, wow, I guess I'm pretty fortunate that I know how to sit in it. I know how to participate in it. I know how it's going to feel to an extent. Every loss feels different and changes your life in a new way. But I was like, okay, like, I guess I'm pretty privileged to be able to be comfortable in this space.
Yeah.
And so I just sat in it and I embraced it and I supported it. And then I went into school and I thought, this is really where I'm going to be. Like, what an opportunity I hope to be able to offer the world is the ability to sit and hear those stories and not carry it for my own, as I have my own, and I can hold mine and I can hear yours. And so I went to school for it, and I was working in hospice care. It's where I did all of my training, and I just loved it in the hospice societies. I got to work with kids as young as 4 and people as old as 97. Like, I got to work with the whole lifespan and see all the different ways and way to help people and how it comes out and how different losses impact. I had your general, grandma or grandpa dies experience to horrific homicidal and suicidal losses. So it was quite the privileged opportunity to be able to know and get practice and sitting like, yeah, I actually really love this work. I really love to have these conversations. And so I really focused on that and sort of moved with it. Opened up my private business after working in the public sector for a little while, and started to hear more stories and to be able to support more people. And again, continued to also experience my own losses. And I loved that being in this work, my losses didn't take away from the work I got to do, and it didn't take away from anyone's stories. And it also helped me in my experience to know that I was among other people in the world who felt similar feelings and had similar experiences. And I got to be the privileged person to sit and witness that in their life. Like, that was amazing. I thought that was the coolest. This is the coolest job ever.
Right.
The coolest job. And then I got a whole new learning of all of the people and pets that I'd lost in my life. I had never been impacted by what I call like my close core, right? A parent, a sibling, a child. And then a couple of years ago, my dad got diagnosed with a terminal illness. And it was not a great outcome. And I, in that moment, was like, okay, everything I feared my whole life was kind of coming true. A bit of a backstory is my dad is a bit older than my mom. And so growing up, I always thought he will die first, and I'm so afraid of that. And so I always made these moments of trying to make sure that I had pieces of my dad out of fear that he would die. And then my reality was coming true. And so I just started doing what I always knew I needed to do. I was spending time. I was listening to all of his stories that he tells me about his life and his travels and the people in his life and the relationships he's had, his trials, his errors, his successes. I started recording them, though, this time. And I started to create pieces of, what is it about my dad's physical appearance that is so important for me to remember? I have photos of him. I have recordings of him. I have his voice. But what are the things that I'm missing? And so I started to do a little bit of that. I also have children now, small children, and I couldn't bear the idea that they might actually be too young by the time he was supposed to die, that they might actually not have any memories of him. And that gutted me. So then I was making all that I could of them getting time with him, and my mom, of course, too, because then that also brought into that idea that I could lose her. And I'm collecting them. I'm getting their measurements. I'm getting their height. I'm getting their voices. I'm getting all these pieces. I'm starting to talk about our relationship. I'm starting to talk about how they viewed me, what their life with me was like, getting to share my pieces about myself with them, the things I really loved about them and love in our lives, and really making sure that I wanted an opportunity to ensure that if and when my loved ones died, that I could hopefully walk away from that moment and go, I said everything I needed to say, and I heard everything I needed to hear. And that's what I was working on. And in that experience, it was heavy, it was hard. It really changed the dynamics of visiting. Of course, it made it more meaningful, but it also made it feel a bit pressured, and really delicate and precious in a different way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I realized the heaviness of it, but I knew that it was all worth it. It was going to be worth it. I needed to do this. And in this work, I was talking with a good friend of mine, about just the weight of it and how I was struggling. And a little while later, she came back to me and she shared that her mom has a terminal diagnosis and it does not look good. And I said, oh, okay, are you doing all of these things? And she's like, what are you talking about? And I realized in that moment that this gift I've been given my whole life of knowing and hearing everyone's stories of all of their should have, could have, would has, misses and pieces of their people that are so important for them after they're gone, was second nature for me to know, and the general public does not. And I thought, oh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I want to memorial rings. Thank you for joining in and listening in on the conversation, and everyone else. Grief to Greatness, Sincent, Courthouse Perspective, Mornings Mornings as a mother. Thank you guys for joining in. Lincoln, thank you guys for joining in. You guys got any questions or comments? Please put them in the comment section, and we'll address them as we go. Hopefully, you guys are enjoying this, right? Like I said, she got a very unique story, and those of us who speak the language of grief, know exactly what she's talking about. It becomes second nature. I am always fascinated when I hear other people speak the same language as I do, right? Because it's hard for me to be around other people because I get excited. I get excited talking about grief and trauma. Mm-hmm. I get excited to be a part of those individuals' journey, just to walk with them to their next destination, right? Because what I carry, like you said, this gift is so unique. Mm-hmm. It is so unique because it's so inviting, it's so soft, but it's such we're able to carry the heaviness of people's loads. so they can breathe a little bit, right?
Mhm.
We able to, as I was telling one of my real good friends, we're able to put out the arm and kind of skip with them, right? You know what I'm saying? And that way
Totally.
they don't worry about all the heaviness, right? I mean, it's still there, but it's the movement, the skipping, that going along that brick road and watching them pave it. And I get excited when I get to speak that language,
Hmm.
right? Because like you said, not everybody's going to hear the language,
No.
but they will experience it.
And you're not in the club until you're in the club. And that's the
Right.
worst part, is you never actually want to be part of this club. But when you get there, there's some pretty cool people that are sitting there just waiting for you to be
Yes.
supported by them.
Yes. And I love it, man. I love it because, every year now, I meet so many amazing people from across the world. And um, it's just it's a strong reminder that grief is a shared human experience.
Mhm.
It's a shared human experience. Although we got these different clubs and some of us belong to multiple, right? And it's something that we can learn from each and everybody that we encounter in these different areas, from sibling loss to child loss to parental loss, grandparents, right? But to be able to see the outside from the place of an blah, 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 blah. Eventually, I learned how to talk. Observer, right? And you get to observe people's lives. Do you ever sit back sometimes and kind of see the path that people are walking on, and go, I know what's about to happen next,
Mhm.
right? And it's like, and you see all of these different areas. You're just like, all they got to do is they go down this path right here. This is what they're going to encounter. I love doing that, right? I
Mhm.
really do. Um,
What I love to do too, I don't know if you ever get this, Tony, but where you hear someone's story and they're so entrenched in it that they can't see the connections of meaning making, or signs or symbols
mhm.
that are actually really impactful in a supported healing journey. But you, as an outsider listening to that story, can go, oh, do you think maybe they did this so you could have this? Or they did this to show you that it was okay? Or, whatever that might be. And you watch the aha moment go, that really awful thing was actually okay.
Right.
And you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
it was
I,
awful.
mm,
It was so important.
yes. That excites me, right?
Hmm.
And sometimes, like I'm really, really careful depending on where they are in their journey, right? Because I don't want to say something um, that's going to be a possible trigger. Because just as well as I do, when you're going through the hardest, the beginning stages, the muck, the dirt, the griminess of it, right? The whole mess, the gambit. Yes, I may be on the outside looking in, but I was once in your space at one time before. So I don't want to say something like, this, maybe they did this to do this, because that's a good way to get cussed out too, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
I mean, because I know I've almost done that a couple of times. Like, what are you talking about? Because it took somebody else to going to me like, and I referenced this, but when my son passed away, the person goes, did you ever think that your son passed away so you can be doing the work that you're doing right now?
Mm.
And I said, well, I couldn't deal without all of that, right?
Yeah.
I can never, because that's a pain that I don't wish on anyone. As a matter of fact, I don't wish pain on anyone. I
Mm-mm.
really don't, because it depends on the relationship that you've had, and it's going to affect how you deal with the grief and everything. So I'm really, really careful not to, not to put what I see in there, right? Because just because I see it, they may not see it. I like to walk with them a little bit, get
Oh,
them to
yeah. You
breathe,
got to
and
build that space.
yeah, you got to build that space up, right? You know what I'm saying? And look, I'm gonna tell you a little trick, right? You know what I'm saying? A little secret that I do. As I'm walking with them, I kind of encourage them to to fill their space with memories that they've had of their loved ones, right? And maybe even go do something. I may even ask you, say for instance, Devin, hey, what were some of the things that you did with your dad? And you may be like, you know what? We used to go get ice cream all the time. And I go, come on, let's go get some ice cream. You know, I won't do it right then and there, but it may be a couple of days. You want to go get some ice cream? You know what, Tony? It's a nice day out. Yes, let's go do it. Guess what? Now we're starting to put those puzzle pieces together, right?
Yeah.
But it's up to you. You know, it's filling that space in to help you get to a place where you're okay. You can breathe a little bit. You can stand up on your own. You're not carrying that burden anymore. You're now turning those burdens into blessings. You know what I'm saying? Little things, memories. You know, and I find that very, very intriguing.
It's the meaning making and the connection. I mean, I will preface, Tony, sorry about the end of that story. My dad actually is doing all right. We got some miracles from wherever they came, and he is doing well, and we are trekking along. But I recognize that that is not always the case.
Yeah, I just assume.
That's fair. That's fair. It's fair. I didn't actually get to the end of the story, so that's totally good.
I just interrupted you. My fault.
No. It was good. It was good. But I'm very fortunate. I count my blessings every day that outcome, the whatever miracle came, because I get some more time. But it didn't change how I felt about the situation.
Right.
And it really does impact the importance about making those memories. And what I love to keep talking about with folks is that just because they're not physically here with us anymore does not mean that you don't get to keep having the same relationship. Right. So you went for ice cream on Tuesdays, you still go for ice cream on Tuesdays. Maybe you buy two and you have one and you just put the other one beside wherever you're sitting in the park or wherever you went. You do those things. You bring their photograph to the restaurant and you put them on the other chair. You put their urn in the bed beside you. You do whatever it is that you used to do, dance with them in the living room, right? There is nothing too weird, too strange, too different, because this is your relationship. This is your life together. Yeah. And you get to make the relationship that you have with them the way you want it to be, even after their loss. Because I would imagine that if you loved them that deeply, you also know what they would say to you in hard times, how they would interact with you in good times, what they would be like in your life. And you can still do those things. It just looks a little different, sounds a little different, feels a little different. But it's still so important to do that, so it's not this abrupt cutoff, like they don't exist in your world anymore, because that's not true. They're forever going to live in your heart, in your memories, in your surroundings, in the things that you see and the things that you do. So it's so important, I think, to remember that we can still do the things we did, just with a little modification. Hurts in the beginning, but it changes, and it becomes a really pleasant, beautiful place of love when the pain isn't so intense all the time.
Right.
Do you ever feel that, Tony? Have you ever seen that?
And you know, here's something else. You know, there's a strange reality that comes along with it. A couple of strange realities that people, when it happens, I think people get wrapped into the emotional turmoil that comes along with it. You know, the pain will always be there. Right. There's, because your life has changed, right? You're now having to rebuild your world without your person in it. And so, there's, you know, it's not as bad as in the beginning, everything is your first. They often say the first ones are your worst ones. I find that in some cases, yes, in some cases, no. Right. So I'm careful not to say, oh, your first one is going to. No, it is all going to depend. It all depends on the relationship that you have with that individual. And, you know, with that pain, it's going to come in waves. But now although that pain is there, it's a reminder that you loved. It's a reminder that you love. Your grief is just reminding you that, hey, you know what I'm saying, I'm still here, and, you know, like, and it's okay for you to feel my presence.
Yeah.
It's okay
It's
for you to
important,
feel.
actually,
It's
because I
it's important.
existed.
It's very important.
Yeah.
And you know, and here's the other side to it as well. You know, and I'm real careful when I say this to people because you know sometimes people can accept it, and sometimes it takes a little bit for them to get to that place. Some people get stuck in the fear of letting go because they don't want to feel like they're losing you.
They don't want to feel all the other flood of emotions that come
Right,
with letting
right.
go.
Well, think
Yeah.
about it, right? There's a guilty feeling. I gotta let you go.
Yeah.
I gotta let you go. But in your heart, you want to keep remembering that person, right? Now, here's the part that people really don't get. I can let you go. I can let go of this attachment to you. And what ends up happening is that I receive a different sort of, like you said, a different sort of relationship with you. I
Mm-hmm.
can let go of my earthly ties to you
Sure.
in order to have a more spiritual tie to you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Energy never dissipates.
No,
The
just
body
changes.
dies. We just change from one form to the next. So I would, you know, I'm just curious about it as always. Like I'm a student of this thing. I'm always like, what if I did do this, right? But people think acceptance meaning forgetting, often
Mm.
means forgetting,
Or
right?
saying that it's okay.
Or yeah,
It
and
doesn't
saying
have to
that,
be okay. Acceptance is, it is what it is. We can't change it. So
yeah,
what are
that's
we
very
going to do
true.
about it?
Yeah, and then you know we that's why you know having people like yourself walk with those individuals, we show them that it's okay to get to a place you know of acceptance and without feeling guilty of letting this part over here go. You have the memories. You have the memories.
Mm-hmm.
You have little things that will always remind you of the relationship that you've always had. You just got to get to a place in order to be able to breathe again and go to the next step. You know, you can give up one day after the other.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Well,
you
and
really
one
can.
thing I'd love to talk to people about when they talk about loving their memories but finding them so painful is
Mm,
I love to remind people that like your brain has wired those memories that that person exists in this world,
yeah.
physically and earthly. And so every single one of your memories actually has to be rewired with the understanding and the language that they've died.
Mm,
And so you think about how many memories your brain has to go and rewire. No wonder grief is so physically and mentally exhausting
yeah.
because your brain is doing so much work and your body is trying to keep up with all the emotions and the sensations it feels in that rewiring.
Mm,
So
that's
when
very
we,
true.
right, when we have grief, it hurts so hard in the beginning because not only we are adjusting to life without them physically here and all the secondary losses that come, like
That's very true.
casually going for lunch or a phone call or, the things you used to do with them, but we're also mentally changing our understanding of life with them. So we have to have time and space to process that so that we have larger capacity to hold the same amount of grief.
Yes. Question.
Yeah.
Because you just said something. I love the fact that you brought up the rewiring of the brain. You know, because a lot of people don't understand your brain will rewire itself to keep you safe, right? But and that's what it does. It will replace it will literally replace memories with things so you don't have to, you know, have to deal with the thought of losing your loved one. It will move stuff around and go, hey, let's put this beautiful tree over here in the place of this memory, you know, because we don't want to deal with that sadness or that, you know, or the thought of that pain that comes
This
along
was,
with associated with that, right?
yeah.
Now, my question would be when your brain rewire itself, or when you see other people's brains rewire itself and you know what's going on, do you think that rewiring has any association with the situation? Because and what I mean by that, what I mean by that. So when the brain rewires itself, like you said, you got all of these other things that come along with it, the mental health, the addiction, and things like that, right? Do you think the brain rewired itself to latch on more to something than it does the other thing?
I mean, it will do that to protect itself. So like
Yeah.
in the space of trauma, like that's where people can have no memories or no recollections because our brain has protected our memories of those so that we can continue to function and survive.
Okay.
And I think in the rewiring, sometimes it is about protecting a little bit, turning down even the volume of the really intense, horrific, traumatic aspects of maybe a death or life as it was ending and afterwards, in order to create space for all the other memories that help us feel connected and loved to have space to breathe. And it really depends on where we are and how much healing we've done in order to accept, like we talked about a few moments ago, that it is what it is and what are we going to do about it. When we are stuck in places of our grief, it tends to be because there are unanswered questions, we feel wronged or harmed in some way, there's an injustice that happened, or there are answers that we just don't have, and it prevents us from being able to kind of close the loop of the story. So you think about, maybe if anybody had a loss where there were medical answers that didn't make sense, or there maybe was negligence in some capacity, then there can be a stuckness that prevents us from moving forward because we want it to be different, or we want to understand why. And we don't even know what level of why we need in order to accept it to be able to move with it. And that's where we can kind of get a lot of like really stuck. And I think once we can find that place of acknowledging it is what it is, what our powers and capacities are to change anything we have around the situation, giving ourselves forgiveness and compassion for doing the very best we could, given what we knew and had capabilities of at the time, then at that point, we are able to see and move to the other aspects of it, where those really poignant pieces of heartache and struggle and maybe guilt are keeping us stuck. Now we can look at the other pieces of all the pieces of love and connection and joy and energy that was fun and events that were good and how to bring them forward. But it can be really those hard traumatic experiences that keep us stuck. And even like we said a little bit before, it makes grief hard to move from.
It does. Well, it's such a we now, you and I and several others like ourselves, we now look at grief from a different perspective, right? It's a shared human experience. Why? Because we have walked the path of loneliness in order to get to the place to where we understand the shared human experience, right? If you haven't already, you will. As long as you live and breathe, you're going to experience a loss. You're going to experience grief. As long as you work or drive a vehicle, and you're going to experience some level of grief. But this is the thing that grief, you can associate with grief with thousands, if not millions of things. Happiness, sad, depression, anger, right? All of these things stem from something else. It's a matter of following the path, not of least resistance, but the path of resistance, because within resistance is everything that you're looking for, right? It's the yin and the yang, right? You want the good, you're going to have to go through the bad, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I really wish it wasn't that way. But in most of our lives, if you want the good, you're gonna have to go through the bad. You're gonna have to get your knees dirty. You're gonna have to scrape up them elbows a little bit, right? Because grief requires you to give up something in order to get the blessing that grief can give you, right? The healing that comes along with that. That's another aspect that people, never really tie together with that, because they're like, oh, the healing aspect. No, the healing is hard too. The healing hurts. Oh my God. And that's where the fun part comes, because the healing will actually unfold everything else. You're like, man, I ain't had to deal with this since I was 3 years old. I know. Come on in here. Know what it's like. And I gotta reference this, right? but it's like Beetlejuice.
You sure, Johnny?
You gotta say the name 3 times for it to appear.
Oh my!
I'm sorry, I had to do that. I had to
You
do
gotta
it.
go there. You gotta go there.
You know the new Beetlejuice is coming out, right? And I was like, ooh. I had to do it. I had to do it. I'm sorry.
All good. I liked it. I liked it.
I had to do it. But no, that's what it's like. It's like you have to say the name 3 times before it appears, and it can be very mischievous.
Mhm.
It can be
Oh
very
yeah.
mischievous, right? Because and here's like I smile about it, I laugh about it because look, I went through the mischievous aspect of it, right? You know what I'm saying? My grief didn't want me to be alone. So it allowed me to make bad decisions.
Mm.
My grief, was so needy that when I lost everything, it said, now that you have nothing to distract you from me, come and sit with me.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want people to have to go through what I've gone through. That's why we do the work that we do, right? You know what I'm saying? 'Cause I don't want people to have to lose everything in order to find themselves again. Right.
Mhm.
I've been there. I've been there. I think we all have walked that path and things like that. And I just pray that we're able to get to those before they get to a place where they're ready to give up and see, and maybe allow us to walk with them, allow us to go, hey, I see you in the mud. I see you in the mud. I'm gonna be sitting over here on this rock over here. If you go down too far, I got a stick that I'm help pull you out. But you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna be sitting right here and then, and we're gonna see where we go from there. Right. Because just as well as I do, you can't do the work for people, but we can come up with things to help guide them along the way.
Oh
You know
yeah.
what I'm saying? Those universal things that we find um, that works the same across the board, right? If we allow people to build their blueprint for their own grief based around those things. I used to say it was the stages of grief, right? You know what I'm saying? But then I realized that they were just great pillars.
Mhm.
It wasn't concrete. And then
Well, there,
further research will go, well, there's over 46 stages of grief. We just got to know how to identify them.
grief is kind of like a big ball of yarn that fell on the ground that you tried to re-roll up. I can appreciate the stages of grief and Kubler-Ross's work. And I love that it's kind of been debunked after it was published to share that it was for people who were dying.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
actually, as grievers, as anticipatory grievers, and as grievers after loss, ours is mucky. It is all over the place. We're going to have good days and bad days and good
Hmm.
moments and yucky moments. And it comes and it goes in its waves. And sometimes the waves are really intense and they're long and they're big. And sometimes they're short. Grief bursts. You ever get it when you're just like kind of in the
Oh,
middle of a grocery aisle and you're like, okay, I'm in
yeah.
public and this is not helpful. Right?
Hmm.
Those moments catch us by surprise so intensely, especially after we're kind of out of that stage or place where we've been, where it's kind of been frequent and constant, where it catches us by surprise, where you're like, I did not expect to be standing in front of the soup and lose my cool.
Hmm.
And that's because of triggers and other things that just brought up the memory or mental space to be able to visit. And that's why I always think about a ball of yarn that has been thrown on the floor and you tried to roll it back up because you don't really know where the end goes or starts. And as long as you've got one piece, you can kind of start working with it. But if you try to just tackle it all, it's going to turn into knotty messes and you might not find where to go and be stuck. So if we
Kind of
kind of
question.
just take it a little bit of a time.
A little bit at a time. I do have a question though, because I'm glad that you brought that up. And I started laughing to myself on the inside because maybe I just see this a different way. But I love the analogy of the yarn. I begin to look at the yarn as messages,
Yeah.
right? They were lessons that I needed to learn So it wasn't a matter of making sense of the yarn. It was a matter of looking at the boldness of the letters and reading them until they dissipated and I could see the next one. Because what I find, and tell me what you think about this, what I find was that once I got the meaning of that little strand of yarn, it could be a few centimeters, a couple of inches, maybe a foot or so, but reading a message on it, and I was able to observe it, I was able to stretch it out, and then go into the next one and hand over the message to someone else that needed it. Like I said, I'm a student, and I'm always looking to learn, even through my own pain, because it's universal. It's not personal.
Nope.
And if this is what I have to do to be better at what I do, I'm willing to understand the message as a student, so I can become a messenger for those who come along afterwards, right? Going from moment to moment, right? Going from moment to moment. In this moment, I need to learn. I need to be a student. In this next moment, I need to be a messenger because of the person that comes along. I need to be able to hand that over to them and articulate what they, because I don't know if they need it or not. But I can articulate it to you and go, it's yours. You go ahead, and then I can go on about my way. So it's just something a little different. But I wanted to get your thoughts about that.
Well, I kind of actually, just as you were describing that, I almost imagined you like walking down a path and like reaching back to pass something to the person who was walking behind you. Like not far behind, but just slightly behind on your path. Like, oh, here's a glass of water, or like, here's the newspaper, right? Like, and that's really what it is in any stage. I think when we're learning from other people is they don't have to be so far down the path to be the person to help you. They can sometimes just be the person who's just slightly ahead of you on the walk. To be able to say, I get that, totally walk that step. It's safe, scary, but it's safe. And if you want somebody to walk with you, I'm right here. But I'm going to keep walking on my journey, but I am here for you if you want it. And sometimes those people can be the most comforting and supportive because, like you said, Tony, there's no rushing it. There's no trying to get people to go somewhere or telling them what to do or making those meetings for them. It's just that gentle hand of guidance to say, I got you. And you can join me if you want to.
I want to add to that.
Yeah.
I just want to add to that because I love the analogy of reaching back, and in a lot of cases, what I found, and I think everybody's journey is going to be different. So, please don't think that that the way that it happened for me is going to happen for everywhere else. But what I find that when I receive the message over here and I'm walking, I realize that sometimes throughout my path, there people join me, right? Or I join them. I like to look at it like I just join them, and I can walk with them with this message and on their way to their next destination. And once they've gotten the message, they go on their path, and I continue on mine, right? So it's not, because if they're behind me, then they're watching from behind. They're not seeing, they're not seeing the path that they're supposed to be on.
Yeah.
Right. That's why I love it when they walk beside me. Like, say, for instance, if I was in Canada and I'm, doing this work and I meet Devan one day, you're having one of those days, right? We just happen to meet at the grocery store and we just carry on a great conversation, right? And I may say some things to you that you'd be like, oh, didn't think about this. Now, by the time we leave the grocery store, maybe that's the end of my destination with you. You go and
call it the reason and the season.
Right. So, understanding the season, right? I don't know what season that you're in. All I know is that I have information that could possibly benefit you. And and I want to be able to give it to you in a way to where you understand that. Not the way that I need to understand it, but the way that you need to understand it, because of the simple fact of I want to make sure that I am showing up the way that you need me to show up, right? And not the way that I feel that you need me to show up, because you're going to need something to allow me to be able to walk with you, right? So again, it goes back to that saying, it's not about me.
No.
It's about the person that I'm walking with. What do you need? That way, I am not pushing you against what you feel.
And I also like kind of look at it that way too, Tony, when you're talking about like if we were to meet at the grocery store and I was having a bad day, you know, there would have also been something about me that invited that request for support. Right? I can't imagine that I would just be by myself, making no eye contact, staring at the soup on the shelf or whatever it might be, and you would come and share this information, right? Like there is a beautiful exchange that happens where someone says, do you see the tears in my eyes? Or do you see that I'm struggling? And then it's that invitation to say, I'm welcoming it if you have it. And then you share what you have to share, and then you continue to go.
Well, I think we attract them.
Oh, yeah.
I think we're like a beacon, right? Because for one, you know, like, yeah, you may put on this great face and you're looking at the soup, right? You're not thinking about what's going on. You're going through your thing. You're going through your grieving, right? You're going through your grief moments. And I may just happen to show up on the same aisle. I may just happen to be down a little ways from you. But what we carry attracts them. It's like a beacon of light. It's like a ray. They know, instinctively, they know, oh, you got something for me. Right?
Yeah.
And think about it this way. Have you
You're a safe person for me to connect to.
Right. Talk about one of your experiences. Have you ever walked across anyone or walked with anyone that didn't invite you into their space, that didn't approach you and just go, right?
No.
Think about it. A person that don't do this work, it's just like two ships passing in the wind in the fog, right? You know what I'm saying? You're just going to keep going. But if you got that lighthouse on top of it, you can be going in there and you can navigate straight to where that destination is. It's like that's what we are. We're the light in the fog, and they find us.
Oh,
I've met so many people that just went, "I'm supposed to talk to you." I'm going, "Oh, here we go." All right, you know, because sometimes I've been like, you know, like I'm like, well, you know, I just want to go fishing. Or you know, I just want to go sit down at the lake somewhere. And then I realized maybe that wasn't the best idea that I've had, right? But it was a beautiful idea because of the person that I've met along the way.
Yeah.
Right? We're here to walk with people in their specific journeys.
Yeah.
And that's the gift that we have.
It's the best gift.
It's the best gift, right? Because they don't know us from Adam, but they find us, right? They find us in the most darndest places too. You know, like, all right, I thought I was going to go get a tan, but apparently I'm walking with you today. All right, come on, let's go.
But what a lovely place that we've done it enough and we know it enough to be able to be okay to say yes.
This is very true. This is very, very true. I know before we wrap up and everything, I always like to ask my guests if you can leave the audience with something today. First and foremost, I want to say thank you for having fun with me and sharing your story and laughing and you know, taking us on this journey with you. But if you can leave the audience with something, what would you leave them?
That's a good question. Two things.
Okay.
One, don't be afraid to ask for what you want before it's too late. Whatever it is, question you need answered, a last hug, whatever that might be, don't be afraid to ask for what you need. The second piece is that as weird as it might seem, the thing you want to do in order to stay connected with your loved one, do it. It's not too weird. It's not too strange. It's not too scary. If you feel that call and that connection to do that thing, that is you helping yourself, staying connected to your person, and also honoring the life that you had together.
Okay. What do you got coming up? You got some things coming up, don't you?
I do have some things coming.
See, you thought I was going to forget. No. What you got coming up now?
No. Thanks for sharing. I appreciate you remembering that conversation we had. Yeah. Just with the pull that I had from the calling that I had from, the experience of my dad, and my friend just not knowing the things that I knew from the gifts of my clients. Mm-hmm. I have started a program to help kind of give every single possible thing I could encourage people to collect of their loved ones while they're still living. So they don't have to be terminal or ill, but they can be, or aging. But it's ways of collecting your people that you can know in your heart that you have done your very best to get everything you could so that you can have them forever. Mm-hmm. So my program is called Gather Before Goodbye. And it is in 4 parts. So the first part of things that I encourage people to collect are the physical aspects. So you think about your 5 senses and the things that you would want to remember of them. So, what they looked like, what they sounded like, what their hug felt like, their touch, their hands, all of those pieces, as many things as you can connect with and collect to do that. The other piece is their own personal story. So what is their history, however they define that, and their life stories. The third part is your relationship with one another, because I can't tell you how many times I've supported people in the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, and the wishing of just knowing, even if it was not things unsaid, but just go, oh, I really wish I knew this thing about our life together that I don't really know, or what they thought of me. I know I have my own experiences of that with the people I've lost in my life. And so wanting to make sure that people don't have as much of it. So things like, what did you think of me? How was your life with me? What are your favorite parts of me? What are the not so favorite parts of me that we've experienced, and vice versa? And any things that, you always wanted to ask, but maybe never felt brave or courageous enough to do. Mm-hmm. I'll take the burden of it, and I'll have it in writing so that you can just say this is part of the course, so that you get those pieces for yourself. And then the last piece is actually that connection of having an open, honest conversation before somebody dies of how do they want to be remembered, and what does your life look like after their physical being is gone from your arms. And so that when you walk around in the world and you find pennies on the ground, or butterflies in the air, or rainbows in the sky, or whatever that might be, that you know for certain that is them trying to connect with you, because that is what you both already established, that is how you were going to visit one another, or how you were going to stay connected, what you want to do at holidays and important dates and maybe annual events. Just getting everything you can so that the day ends and you wake up the next morning and they are no longer here. You have as much as you could have of them. And I hope that it makes your grief easier and lessens the guilt that might present itself. Yeah. So that's what I'm working on.
I love it. And let me know how I can, as always, let me know how I can support that and help get the word out there. Because we all walk in this path together, right? Trying to, and not even trying, we're making an impact. We're normalizing the conversations around death, dying, and grief, where we have amazing people that are coming out into this field that are doing some amazing things like yourself. So, let me know how I can always support that. Help get the word out there. People, you guys heard her. You know what I'm saying? Be on the lookout for it. Tell her I said that. All right.
People can always follow me on Instagram or Facebook, to check out my website to follow along if they're interested. But yeah, I just hope that it finds the people who it will benefit. I know that particularly here, medical assistance in dying has become an increasing number. And so my hope is that it's helpful when we have imminent death known dates that now brings purpose to your hospital visits or your home visits or whatever that might look like.
Well, that was my next question. How can people find you on your social media?
Yeah.
I know you have all your information, but let people know where they can find you.
Oh, thanks, Tony. Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram or Facebook at Devan Cecilia Counseling. And my website is devanceciliacounseling.com. And I'm on LinkedIn as well at Devan Cecilia or Devan Christain-Vermeer. I can never remember which one, but maybe Devan Christain-Vermeer.
I do have her information in the description in here and everything. Devan, thank you again for joining us. Thank you. Hold on. Devan, put your information in the chat. Yes, I can. Golden Willow Dula. I will put that in there. You said Devan.
Oh yeah. I can't. I can show chat and hide chat, but I don't.
I'm gonna type it in over here. So just run it down to me again, Devan.
Yeah, Devan. Devan Cecilia COUNSELLING.com.
Right. So yeah, I just put that in the chat over here in Instagram. So yeah, hopefully that helps.
Yeah, Instagram and Facebook is just Devan Cecilia. So you just remove the counseling.com piece and
and your IG, please.
ID.
Your IG.
Oh, Instagram. Yeah, Devan Cecilia. DEVAN CECILIA. Counseling. COUNSELLING.
COUNSE.
LLING.
No, see, I didn't drew a blank and all kinds of stuff. And yes, you are right, Golden Willow. In some cases you can do that, but I'm actually streaming on StreamYard right now, so I'm not quite sure how it interacts with there. I know I have to pull a link from Instagram in order to tie it into everything else. So, but we're still working with it. We're still working with it. Devan, thank you again for being on today. Thank you for just gracing us with your story and having fun with us and everything else. I look forward to doing this again. And again, let's stay in contact. Let me know how I can support you in all those different ways. For everyone who has been tuning in, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for supporting. But do me a favor, if you haven't already, if you could head over to my YouTube channel, if you can hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. And please you don't have to apologize. You can always catch the episode on the YouTube channel. This will actually be up there, so hopefully you guys do enjoy it. But even if you don't subscribe, and if you know someone who can benefit from the conversations that we have, do me a favor, share it along with them. We're doing our best to try to make sure that everybody knows that there's somebody out there for them that have gone through something similar. With that being said, I am Tony Lynch. This is going to conclude this episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. And as always, tune in tomorrow as we drop another daily episode for you guys. Hey, hopefully you guys are out there making some beautiful memories with family, friends, and smiling, making people laugh. Because remember, we're just walking each other home. So make sure we leave people in a better position than where we found them.
Thanks so much, Tony.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you.